We often take it for granted. We assume it's always going to be there, but without doubt, it's a critical resource. It's required to support life and the natural wildlife habitat that is such a key part of the Louisiana landscape that we all enjoy. It's required to manufacture anything. You can't make something without water, whether it's directly in the product like ketchup or latex paint, or whether it's used in the manufacturing process to add heat or remove heat or et cetera. So you got to have water to make something. The coming tsunami refers to the new plants and plant expansions in Louisiana resulting from the availability of low-cost natural gas. In addition to existing industrial demand for fresh water, demand will increase as these new plants and expansions come online. And parallel with that is going to be increasing demand for fresh water from residential and commercial users as new people move into the area to, man the plants, build the plants, et cetera. So we're going to see increasing freshwater demand in really all of the sectors there, from residential, commercial to industrial. And, like all natural resources, freshwater is a finite resource. And we have to manage the supply and demand of natural resources, such as fresh water, to meet the needs of the various consumers in an environmentally responsible way. That's the key. The Louisiana Department of Natural Resources is the state regulatory agency that performs that management task for the citizens of Louisiana. Heading that effort.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. The industries that LCA represents are certainly critically important to the economy of the state of Louisiana, and we appreciate the work that you all do. Although we are not the primary agency that you typically deal with, we certainly realize how important the natural resources that we oversee are to your industries, both as feedstock as well as to fuel your plants. Another very important natural resource, as Rick said, that we play a role in regulating is that of water in the state of Louisiana. Louisiana is very fortunate. We have abundant water resources in this state, in most parts of the state, both groundwater and surface water. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that lots of your facilities have located here, is because of that abundance of water and why you've chosen to do business here. We not only have the Mississippi, the Calcasieu, the Atchafalaya, the Red River, but we also have tremendous supplies of clean groundwater in our aquifer systems across the state, and a network of other rivers and bayous and lakes that can be utilized. For a long time in Louisiana, the focus was on how do we keep the water off of us. We build levees to protect us against floods and storm surges and hurricanes. But now we're starting to focus change that focus a little bit. Other states such as Texas or Alabama, Georgia, Florida, they have limited water supplies. We don't have that issue here. We've had greater supplies of water that we're able to deal with, and I think our focus has shifted to one of how do we better manage it, because we're going to have the expansion, we're going to need more water, we're going to need to utilize it properly. We're switching to that. We want to be able to deal with a water source in a way that we are protective of the environment but supportive of the economic growth. Water is a key to the industrial expansion that's ongoing, from processed waters for your petrochemical plants to water for navigation, for shipping of the products. We look at water for coastal protection to help hold back the salinity, be able to use for things to transport sediment. All of that is extremely critical, not only as the coastal protection serves to protect our citizens, but also to protect the various assets that we have along the coast of Louisiana that are critical to the industries that are here. We look at hydraulic fracturing that's used to produce gas, and we have to look at how we produce that water in a responsible way to take care of that activity, because that gas is needed and those feedstocks are needed for your facilities as well as drinking water. We're going to have an expanding growth of population, and we have to make sure we have a drinking water supply, a good drinking water supply, and we have that here in the state of Louisiana, and we have to make sure that that is protected as well. There's been a lot of focus on water of late in Louisiana, both in the public debate over the legislative session, as well as with the Water Resources Commission that's been established in the state to come up with a comprehensive plan for water use in the state of Louisiana, and that work is ongoing. We also have had a lot of debate among citizens who have taken a lot of interest in the water resources of this state to make sure that they're being properly protected. Of late, you've heard lots about hydraulic fracturing in St. Tammany Parish and the saltwater intrusion in the Baton Rouge area of the Southern Hills Aquifer System. And those have all been hot topics in the press, so it's certainly something that's at the forefront of everyone's minds. But I want to be very clear on one thing. Louisiana doesn't have a shortage of water. We have more than what is needed for the upcoming manufacturing boom that we're expecting to see. It's really not a matter of if we have enough, it's how do we manage it properly so that all the competing interests are properly addressed and the environment is properly addressed. Whether it be groundwater or surface water, what are you going to use? We have aquifers out there. We have the drinking water aquifers, the potable aquifers. There are also significant non-potable aquifers that can still produce quality water with some treatment. So those are all out there and available, and I think are going to be critical to the expansion that's taking place. I want to talk a little bit about some of the programs that we have at DNR that focus on making sure that we protect those resources and have it available to us. It is an asset that this state has that lots of other states where people may choose to do business do not have as an abundant supply of it. So one of the programs that we have, the Commissioner is going to talk about the groundwater program that's under the Office of Conservation. He's going to hit on some of those highlights. But another program that we have is called the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement Process. It's one that was passed in 2010 by the Louisiana legislature to address the use of running surface waters of the state. And that process was basically in response to the Haynesville shale development up in the northern part of the state, where there were issues with groundwater use, some shortages in the aquifers up there, the Carrizo-Wilcox specifically. And so we were trying to encourage people to get into the surface water bodies for use of that water for hydraulic fracturing, but we needed to make sure it was being done responsibly. Additionally, we had to address some opinions by the Attorney General's office that basically a non-riparian landowner, to use those resources of the state, needed to do something that had a public benefit and also provide something of value back to the state of Louisiana. And so that is the process that we utilize to do that. That statute actually had a sunset on it. It was set to expire this year. However, Senator Long has a bill at the Louisiana legislature this year. It's made it through the Senate and it's over on the House floor right now to extend it for another 2 years. And what that process does is it allows people to come in. Typically, folks will do an economic impact analysis rather than actually paying for the water. They'll do the economic impact analysis and show that they are having a significant impact on the economy of the state. In some cases, it is utilized for folks who will do a pipeline construction project. They may just pay in on that project rather than taking the time to do the economic impact analysis. And it's been used for other construction projects as well. I think overall it's been a good process. We put in low flow criteria to make sure that we're taking care of the environmental concerns that need to be addressed when we're doing this process. And then we also take a look at what other users are already on a system and make sure that those users are protected as well. Now, another item that's taking place in the session this year regarding that, Representative Jeff Thompson has a bill in place to no longer allow the economic impact statement on any water bodies that have issues with aquatic vegetation. And that bill has passed through the House. I believe it's over at the Senate right now. And it's primarily to address the giant salvinia problem up in Lake Bissonneau, but it is something that's changing with that program. It is a voluntary process that people are utilizing. We've utilized it across the state, as I said earlier, and primarily it was used for the hydraulic fracturing. One of the other things I'd like to take the opportunity to talk to you about today as well is our Coastal Zone Management Program at DNR, which oversees activities in the coastal zone regarding impacts to coastal waters, coastal resources, and wetland impacts. The coastal zone of Louisiana was revised in 2012 by the legislature and was based on a scientific study that was done. We've had lots of change since the boundary was first established in 1980. We've had coastal erosion, changes in salinity, different storm surge models and all that came up. And so we wanted to make sure that we really were protecting the resources that were affecting our coastal zone. So with that study, we ended up adding some areas to the coastal zone, but we also ended up taking some areas away that really weren't impacting that. So that was done in 2012. In that coastal zone management program, we worked to avoid impacts, and when necessary, we minimize the impacts. When we have unavoidable impacts due to some development, we'll minimize those impacts and then mitigate for any unavoidable impacts to our coastal wetland resource across the coastal zone of Louisiana. What we have in our coastal zone permitting process is a joint process with the Corps of Engineers. And in that process, we work with the Corps to minimize redundancy. You'll probably still need to get a permit from each of the groups. However, we're going to work together to try to minimize that redundancy. And as proof of that, the Corps has always provided funding to the Department of Natural Resources to implement this joint permitting process. With the federal budget concerns, they pulled that funding a couple of years ago. However, at DNR, we chose to continue to follow that model, and we just took in the cost, paid for it ourselves, because we think it's the best thing to do for people who do business in Louisiana. We think it's what we can do to minimize the burden of having two regulatory processes there. We get comments from the folks at DEQ, Wildlife and Fisheries, CPRA. We get comments from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries. We know it's important when you're constructing projects to be able to stay on schedule with your permitting. And so what we try to do is get all those comments on the front end, get them addressed, make sure everyone knows what's going on, what the concerns are, and allow those things to come out and allow everyone to get their comments in. So we think that that's an important process. We also have a Corps of Engineers employee who is actually housed at the Department of Natural Resources. So when any of you come in with your projects to meet with us, we can bring them on board, and you can be hearing directly from the Corps what is required by them and what you need to submit. Now, lots of the projects that we look at with our coastal zone management program, we're looking at what's going to happen. Will the project change the salinity of an area? Will it impede hydrology of an area? We don't want to increase flooding. We want to make sure that we're properly using our water resources. And so we work well with them to do that, and we'll continue to do so. As I stated earlier, Louisiana is blessed with water resources that are critical to the wave of manufacturing we are experiencing. We have to work together to make sure we utilize this important resource in a way that is sustainable, because it's important not only to our environment, but it's important to the economy. We have to make sure that we are doing things in a sustainable way so that you can have predictability on what resources you're going to be able to utilize. I'd like to also briefly discuss some of the other assets that Louisiana has that we play a role in regulating. We're blessed with an extensive pipeline network in Louisiana. We have just under 70,000 miles of pipelines in Louisiana, and the commissioner and his staff regulate the intrastate pipelines, those that are wholly within the boundaries of the state of Louisiana. And the interstate pipelines in Louisiana are regulated by the federal government. However, just as we talked about the folks in coastal management working with the Corps of Engineers, the commissioner and his staff work closely with the federal government to try to make things more efficient in working with both systems in the state. We also have 28 salt domes in Louisiana with permitted or abandoned wells on them, and over 270 caverns. And realize that these caverns not only, as they're being created, provide feedstock to many of the plants, but they also allow for the storage of natural gas, butane, and other hydrocarbons. The commissioner and his staff have primacy from EPA for these, so they are the permitting authority. They just have some oversight from the federal government on how those things are operated. And we issue permits for both solution mining and gas storage. And as many of you know, rules were promulgated this past year in response to legislation that was passed last session, putting new requirements upon the solution mining and gas storage industry. And the commissioner and his staff are busy implementing those requirements right now, and those of you who are in the industry are certainly working with them on that. We also have over 40,000 producing oil and gas wells in the state of Louisiana currently that provide the fuel and the feedstock for your plants as well. We have 3 shale plays that are currently active in the state of Louisiana, with the Haynesville Shale up in northwest Louisiana, the Brown Dents up in northeast Louisiana, and then the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale in central Louisiana, which we've only begun to develop, where we only have right now 20 wells producing in the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale. We also have excellent transportation infrastructure in Louisiana, with rivers and ports for shipping, where we're involved in that dredging activity within the coastal zone of Louisiana, as well as development activity that may impact wetlands. Additionally, the rail and highway system is very good here, and we're often involved in wetland permitting wherever we have those activities occurring. We're working hard in Louisiana to create an environment where all of our natural resources can be utilized to support our economic growth, and must do this responsibly to make sure that we have sustainability for our environment and for our economy. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I want to thank you all most for doing business in Louisiana. I appreciate the opportunity.
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity as well to be here, and it's always nice to come into such a historic hotel. You know, I've read about this place, and it's really something. They did a good job fixing it up. But anyway, as the theme of the program indicates, water resource management here in Louisiana is a matter of serious consideration and discussion at all levels of government, as well in the private sector. This discourse is driven, as I see it, by our increased understanding of the intrinsic value of water. We need only to look west out to Colorado, Arizona, California, and just our neighbor state to the west, Texas, just to see what to witness the dramatic steps that are being taken to secure adequate water resources for human consumption, industrial use, and agriculture. This web of action includes Supreme Court cases, multi-state meetings and accords, and huge investments in infrastructure and technology to transport, recycle, desalination of water, and things like this. Louisiana already has felt the ripples of this great grasping for water, most recently with the effort by outside investors to purchase water from the Toledo Bend reservoir that separates us and Texas. With this national context in mind, it makes sense for government and the private sector here in Louisiana to assess the current state of our water resources, recognizing that a plentiful supply is not the same as an infinite supply. I followed with some interest the recent projections about our state's expected industrial boom in the coming years, fueled by the low natural gas prices and emerging technologies and an encouraging business climate. One estimate claimed that the boom may see as $60 billion worth of new industrial construction and perhaps 80,000 new construction jobs. That's significant. Looking at these numbers, my first thought is of the tremendous positive impact this will have on the state's economy and its working families. But in my official capacity as Commissioner of Conservation, my thinking eventually turns to water. For even if such a boom doesn't happen, even a 25% or 50% of the estimate is going to have a great amount of demands on our most critical natural resource. Industries must plan for all aspects of their operations, feedstock, materials, and especially water, as part of their business models. I know that each facility represented here today has a clear accounting of the amount and the quality of the water utilized in your particular processes, whether it's be for manufacturing, cooling, or power generation. And I know with each facility there's a plan, probably alternate plans that are in place as to how you're going to secure and maintain these water supplies. The state of Louisiana, and especially my agency, the Office of Conservation, is no different. What we have seen recently in state government is a logical trend towards the more efficient management of our water resources because of our increased and better understanding of Louisiana's water resource demands. The Office of Conservation by statute has authority over the state's groundwater resources, specifically the conservation and protection of these resources from overuse and depletion, while ensuring their continued sustainable availability for public supply and overall economic development. Traditionally, groundwater has been an important part of Louisiana's overall water use matrix. It remains so today, even though industrial use of groundwater, which peaked in the 1970s with about 500 million gallons a day, has fallen in recent years to only about 240 million gallons per day, according to USGS reports. Yet surface water was then and is now the most significant resource for industry in terms of sheer volume, providing about 88 to 90% of total water use. That doesn't mean that our groundwater resources are in the clear. We do face specific challenges that have either a direct or indirect impact on sustainability, but these are well known and under effective management. In the Sparta aquifer of north central Louisiana, groundwater level declines caused by overpumping led to my 2005 decision to establish several areas of concern, which remain in effect today, and they are under strict observation and reporting requirements. The Sparta Groundwater Conservation Commission has worked very hard to raise local awareness about the aquifer and has partnered with local government and industry to find alternatives to groundwater use. In fact, a great example of the role industry can play in conservation comes from this region. The Sparta Reuse Project in West Monroe is a public and private endeavor. It's turning wastewater into a viable supply for industrial consumption, thereby reducing the dependence on the local aquifer in the amount of several million gallons per day. In the same geographic area, the Union and Lincoln Regional Water Supply Initiative is working to replace groundwater drawn from the Sparta aquifer with surface water from Lake Dorborn. If constructed, such a system supplying Farmerville and Ruston and the local plants and industries might reduce groundwater usage by some additional 12 to 15 million gallons per day. So my agency is very closely following the effort here. In the northwest corner of our state, the Office of Conservation likewise has been active in groundwater issues. We continue to maintain a groundwater emergency order in parts of Caddo Parish where slow recharge rates and overuse in the dry summer months have caused levels in the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifer to dip significantly, even to the point of domestic wells running dry. We have seen overall improvement since 2011, but the orders and restrictions are still in effect. Recognizing the limitations of such formations in the region, such as the Carrizo-Wilcox and the upland terrace aquifers of northwest Louisiana, my office moved during the early stages of the Haynesville shale boom in 2008 to encourage oil and gas operators to switch from groundwater to surface water for their rig supply and for their hydraulic fracturing needs. We had a positive response from corporate leadership, with nearly 80% of water usage for oil and gas development in the play eventually coming from surface water. So that's going from no surface water to 80%. That's a really significant thing. And what we've done with the additional development of hydraulic fracturing around the state, we've applied this same philosophy We believe that surface water should be used if at all possible. And that's the message that we're now giving industry that are developing the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale as well as the Brown Dents formation that Secretary Schutz mentioned a minute ago. As a result of our experiences with the development of the Haynesville Shale, my office has tightened reporting requirements and evaluations for the industry, including volumes of water used and sources of supply, and this is for every well. I've also issued a water use advisory for any new development in the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale across eastern and central Louisiana. It's very, very similar to, like I said, what we've done in the Haynesville Shale. Oil and gas operators are now required to report either directly to the Office of Conservation or to the Frac Focus National Disclosure Registry the composition of all fluids used in hydraulic fracturing. These policies that we will continue to monitor and vigorously enforce as other gas and oil plays come into production in the oncoming years. Now, here in Baton Rouge, my office has worked closely with the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission, the U.S. Geological Survey, and major groundwater consumers on the long-term sustainability of the Southern Hills Aquifer System, which provides the city parish with more than 150 million gallons per day. This system is a vast resource that stretches across southeast Louisiana and up into Mississippi. But saltwater encroachment in the Baton Rouge area has been acknowledged since at least the 1960s and before, and the legislature created the Capital Area District in the 1970s to monitor and regulate the local groundwater usage. In the past 2 years, there has been significant action, including a public hearing conducted by my office, the completion of the first set of USGS aquifer models on the saltwater flow and the management scenarios, reduction in groundwater usage, and the installation of a scavenger well to protect a major public supply pumping station here in Baton Rouge. With public interest in this topic growing, my office implemented an important education and awareness effort in the community to provide clear, concise information. And just last month, the Capital Area Commission took a major step forward with the publication of its official planning document for management of saltwater encroachment in the local aquifers. As in other challenge areas, the management of the Southern Hills system in Baton Rouge is a work in progress that must continue, and it must rely on science to guide the path forward. And to close, I want to specifically encourage industry and its continued and smart use of Louisiana groundwater resources to understand the spirit and letter of the regulations governing my office's work, and to know that the Office of Conservation staff are committed to providing industry with guidance and groundwater use and regulatory compliance. As the state moves forward into a period of increased economic prosperity, think about our water and think about how the Office of Conservation can help you plan responsibly. Thank you very much.